And welcome into another week of Every Day We're Covering. Chris Parks, SJ Munoz with you once again to talk some college football. It's feels a little weird. It feels like an odd week because obviously we didn't have much college football this past weekend, just the Army Navy game. But we're going to get hot and heavy into bowl season now, so we're looking forward to that. But yeah, SJ, doesn't feel like the typical record week for us, that's for sure.
Yeah, I guess give us a little time to regroup here, and it'll be a little interesting here as bowl matchups always kind of provide a little bit more of a unknown factor, and then let alone the early ones are kind of just who knows what you're going to get, but we're gonna go ahead and make some picks and see if we can come up on the right side of things here. But like you said, yeah, it was strange having 13, 14 weeks straight of games, and at least three or four that you really want to keep a close eye on and watch to to go right to basically nothing. No offense to the armed services, but to go from that to the other is kind of a sudden change. But good to see some more normal this week here, and getting back to some good slate of football games here.
Yeah, we've got quite a few bowl games coming up in the next weekend, so we'll take a look at all those. We'll make picks on all those and have some fun with it. Hopefully, give you some good picks to go after. But yeah, bowl season is upon us. We're ready for that. We did have the Heisman Trophy ceremony here over the past weekend, and it ends up being LSU's Jaden Daniels who wins the Heisman Trophy. Maybe a little bit of a surprise, just because the other guys that he was there with had some more of the recent attention. Obviously Daniels playing for a team that didn't have as much success throughout the year. He had a very successful season, but sometimes those guys are the ones that kind of get left out. But this time around, they thought it was enough for him to win it, and I think deserving of it, the numbers that he put up. But I was a little surprised that it was him that got the nod.
With you there, definitely deserving, like you said, had the accolades and put up the stats. But typically, and especially in recent memory, it's basically the best player on the best team is what the awards turned into, and more specifically, the quarterback on the best team has kind of been what the awards turned into. And I thought Maserati Marv had it in the bag to be, if you want my opinion, if I would have made a play on that, that would have been where I'd went. But obviously, the odds were I'm assuming in his favor. I don't want to get to that world where I'm betting on awards award recipients. So we'll leave that for the others. But yeah, that was surprising, but it's also maybe nice to see a change too of unlike maybe the playoff decision. It wasn't just going with the predictable, and there was a little bit of thought put into it. And maybe some people actually watched some games and voted that way rather than just their alliances or alumni or what have you.
Yeah, yeah. Always interesting to see how that plays out. Obviously, like you kind of alluded to, it is pretty subjective. A lot of opinion, obviously, coming from all over the place that plays into that. But yeah, Michael Penix, Bo Nix, Marvin Harrison Jr., Jaden Daniels were the guys there, and Jaden Daniels gets the nod. You mentioned Marvin Harrison. I agree with you there. He's probably the most electric player overall in college football. Now, obviously, they didn't win the one big game that they had on their schedule, and maybe that's what holds him back from winning the trophy. But then one that I kind of thought maybe would sneak up and grab it just because of the recent success and excitement was Penix. The way that he had played in those big games against Oregon and the kind of the excitement that team has. I thought that might kind of sway some voters, but overall, like we had kind of agreed on, a guy that won it had the numbers to deserve it. So, and I don't think we would have been too upset had maybe any of those three guys won it. I think, but those first two, Penix, or excuse me, with Daniels and then Harrison, probably the two most deserving to walk away with it. So it was interesting to watch that. RV Navy, we mentioned it was played this weekend. Not the most exciting affair, but it did come down kind of to the wire. Army had to make a late stand to make sure that they held on and win the game. 17-11 was the final. Army beats Navy, so one for Army here this year if you're playing that on either side. But I didn't get to watch much of it, but my dad said it was a fairly entertaining game. There were some big plays both directions, but Army had enough of the defensive side of things going to get it done. Obviously, we always start with talking about some good beverages as well. And, after a weekend where we didn't have much, maybe we're looking forward to something else to to kind of sip on to tide us over here. And I've been waiting to try to find this one. I did have a taste of it at an establishment not too long ago, and I actually, I guess I have seen it in the past, but it hasn't been something that this company's done for a long time. And it's the folks in your neck of the woods there, the Boulevard Brewing Company. One of their, of course, famous beers, if you follow their stuff, is called Tank 7, which is a saison, a little bit different kind of funky flavor to it, but a lot of people love it, including myself. And they do one during the holidays here recently called the Cranberry Tank 7. I've been trying to track it down. I did find it here this past week. Very pleased with finding it, and I'm going to enjoy these 6 that I got in the fridge.
Yeah, we better get to finishing up here quick because that's got a little kick to it. I know those are that's kind of the appeal as far as if you had a rough day and you kind of need to just forget. It's a good mind eraser if you want to put it that way.
Yeah, no doubt.
But as far as on my end, I guess I won't speak for you, but I think you're along the same lines of me as pro NIL type of proponent of giving letting the people that are earning the money reap those rewards. So along those lines. I was up in Lincoln actually for a youth soccer camp for one of our kids, and I got my hands on the Cornhead Lager that's made by Cross Strain Brewing. The beer itself is your standard lager, nothing. I mean, it tastes fine. It's an easy drink, but it's nothing too great. But I do kind of appreciate the the NIL component of it, which wise. I mean, if I'm going to talk the game, I got to back it up and donate my funds to the cause as well. So, if this was available in my area, it definitely would probably be just a nice everyday drinking beer, just have it in the fridge at all times. So, kind of along those lines, basically that describes what it is. But I figured I had the chance to do it, so I went in and grabbed it. And Cross Strain obviously is pretty reputable company, and they've got a good variety of beers, so I figured I couldn't really go wrong with that, especially being a lager. So that's what I'm drinking on here tonight.
Yeah, you enjoy their stuff, definitely. Pretty cool that companies are doing that. You're seeing that all across the country, and a lot of them started to do it pretty early once the availability or possibility was out there. I know that both Iowa State have theirs, and interestingly enough, even the smaller programs now here in the state of Iowa, Drake and you and I now have their own beers too. So everybody's getting their love. I like to see that, and I'm gonna have to try to track down the Drake one actually because I saw it on the shelves the other day. I almost bought it, but it was a honey Kolsch that Confluence is doing for them, and that's a style that I like. So I'm gonna have to try it, even though I'm not necessarily a Bulldog supporter. But I'll give them their little bit of love too. But yeah, fun to see that. Now, this time of year, we also see, aside from the football, all the other stuff that goes on off the field. You start to see the coaching carousel. That's something that we've known forever. Guys get fired and replaced and move around and change places, and all kinds of crazy things happen in that realm. Of course, now that the portal has become more of a thing, and it's easy for athletes to go from one stool to another and be able to play right away. That's now the other thing that goes on right away once the regular season is over. Kids making the decision that they are going to transfer and go somewhere else. We've seen some big names on both sides of that, the coaching and the players. But we kind of wanted just to give you a few of them and maybe talk about what we think maybe are a couple of big ones. I was going to start just kind of giving you the list here on the coaching side. One of the ones that we had already talked about, of course, was the opening over at A&M, and the Aggies did go with Mike Elko, who we brought up, a guy that had coached there before and was familiar with College Station. He comes over from Duke and does fill that role. So that was one of the big ones early on. Also, some of the other names that I'll throw out there at you, John Sumrall went from Troy over to Tulane, so that was a spot that needed to be filled after Tulane's head coach had departed and went over to Houston. Manny Diaz, who is a name you probably heard in many different places, he's a defensive coordinator at Penn State. He's going to go take Elko's spot over at Duke, so that's already been filled. Bronco Mendenhall back in the game after his runs. He's at New Mexico, so he's back in the mix. And then Indiana needed a new coach. Terry Allen is out, and they went after the new hot man, James Madison's Kurt Signetti. So he is in there to fill that role for a Big Ten program. Oregon State's Jonathan Smith went over to Michigan State. Trent Bray, they promoted from defensive coordinator to take over the head role there at Oregon State, so that's already filled. Jeff Lebby, the Oklahoma offensive coordinator, is now going to take over at Mississippi State. And then, of course, Northwestern did elevate David Braun, who was the interim coach this year, to become the new head man. That was just a few of the highlights. There's plenty more on this list here, but any of those or any others, maybe SJ, that stand out to you as kind of big ones or maybe big culture changers for those teams?
One thing I was thinking is, Bronco is more of a nickname of like the long lines of a cat of some sort. That guy's got about at least 9 lives, if not more. That was just somebody that I hadn't even thought of
Mm-hmm.
in several years, and no knock on him. He's had some decent success in a couple of places.
Mm-hmm.
It was just surprising to see that was kind of a name pop back up and get a job before you could even think twice. But no, just kind of the standard musical chairs event of this time of year. Kind of moving around and just who knows what, a lot of times is the connections, drawing back, and it's obviously a wait and see mode, at this point. But as far as, from my perspective, not really many big splashes, but I will kind of got to give a little bit of maybe credit, or just A&M did do something maybe a little bit out of sorts for them recently, at least. So give them credit there to maybe taking a different route rather than just throwing money at somebody. Obviously, they're going to pay him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm sure he's not doing it for free, but not just throwing a big bag of cash at somebody and hoping it's going to work out. Maybe thinking it through a little bit more. We'll see. It's obviously we've talked about the challenges they have, and just the competition level, and it's only going to ramp up with Oklahoma and Texas joining the fray there. But a different concept maybe for them.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see how that works out.
Yeah, not just trying to pull Urban Meyer out of retirement or some wacky thing like that. So they go maybe the more logical route, and we'll see if it works out. As you kind of joked to me too afterwards, though, after I said, "Hey, maybe they did something normal for once." He's like, "Well, the press conference got a little abnormal there at the end because they had to go to the singing and all that."
Just can't have nice things, I guess, in those parts. It was a little bit unnerving, but I suppose if you're along the in that fan base, or an alum or whatever, that's just typical. But it's definitely off-putting to those of us that aren't a ardent supporter of that school. But do what you got to do, I guess. If they're winning, everyone thinks it's all good and grand, and big. Oh, look how the culture there. But if they lose, it's a cult. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
it just depends on how the things on the field play out, as in most cases.
Yeah. The two that I did want to mention just real quick, a little bit more on, I thought it was interesting and maybe nice that Manny Diaz is getting that chance to head out of that kind of coordinator role and become the head man there at Duke. We'll see what kind of success he has in that role there. He's kind of bounced around a bunch of different places, is maybe not the headline guy, so he'll get that opportunity. And then the one that's just an absolute, and this isn't a head coach, but I had to bring this up because this is just an absolute joke when it comes to college athletics. Bobby Petrino was hired back as the offensive coordinator at the University of Arkansas, a place where he was publicly embarrassed and embarrassed the school, maybe more than any other coach ever has, with the kind of story that came out when he was there. He was fooling around with an athletic staffer that was a member of the volleyball staff, obviously while he was married to someone else, driving his motorcycle down the road and had a wreck, and it became a whole spectacle and story. And now somehow it's okay. It wasn't okay then. We had to get rid of him, but now it's okay that he comes back and he's part of our program once again. And then, of course, on top of that, now you've got a guy that's been the coach before, breathing down the neck of the guy that's trying to be the head coach. None of this makes sense to me, and I just can't believe it. Sometimes I just shake my head because I can't believe this stuff happens.
Well, the thing that's, obviously you ran down pretty well there of all what makes this such an odd decision, what kind of just laughable and just embarrassing. Would not want to be associated with things of that sort. But it's not like he's coming from a place where he's lighting the world on fire, or that, he's like, everyone wants him, banging down his door. I mean, he was on a staff where the head coach was fired, but yet, you feel the need to bring him back and kind of just put some type of, blemish or whatever you want to call it on, an added distraction. Or like you said, he's, I'm sure he's going to have, a voice and a strong opinion on, what the head man there is doing. So it just seems like an unnecessary move, and it doesn't really seem warranted for what the situation is. Like, it doesn't seem it's a need. It's kind of like causing a problem when there's nothing there.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, maybe Sam Pittman was involved in all this and in making the decision, perhaps. But boy, I don't know what would have gone through his head to decide that that's a good idea. I mean, the school came out and said, publicly supported you before the season was over and said, "Hey, we're bringing him back. He's not going to be fired." But now you're kind of putting that extra layer of uncertainty right behind you. I just maybe they pressured him to do something like that. I don't know, but it's ugly. I don't understand how it happens, and especially at a school like that. I mean, you're in the SEC. You make plenty of money. The program certainly always has the capability of where they're located to find good players and become a good program. But you're doing stuff like that, and there's no way this is going to come to a good resolution. It just makes absolutely zero sense. But hey, that sometimes the crooks win, and he's got
Well,
himself wiggled in there.
and I guess I don't remember the terms of the parting there, and maybe
Yeah,
maybe they're still owing him some money, and they said if we're going to pay him, he might as well be working for us. I mean, I assume not, considering how it ended. I would assume there was cause there to be fired, but at the same time, who knows? Maybe he had a good lawyer and he was able to finagle something there, and they figured if you're going to be getting money from our university, you might as well be earning that, and coaching there for our staff. And that's obviously
sure.
more of a joke than serious, but who knows?
Yeah. Well, and he's obviously not a guy that's shown much loyalty to anywhere he's been, because he was at UNLV for about 3 weeks earlier this offseason. So unreal. Of course, the other one, too, just shout out to David Braun. What he did at Northwestern is pretty much next to a miracle. I mean, the program was in absolute shambles in the offseason and rocked by what's an awful thing that they had going on behind the scenes, and he found a way to make that team kind of flow and work here this year. So be interesting to see what if he can accomplish the kind of things that have been accomplished there before, which we all know is really difficult to do at that school.
And it's a good problem to have, but at the same time, you just set the expectations a little high in your first season. But I mean, no one's gonna, you don't apologize for winning that many games. Just even at places like Northwestern, people have a short memory when it comes to success and failures. So he's going to have to follow that up. But he definitely earned that title of a full-time head coach.
No doubt. The other players, maybe, that are the big names that have been moving around, and of course, everybody looks to the quarterback because that is the most important position on the field and can be the most impactful when a transfer happens. We've seen some pretty big names, and some of them that have already made their decision on where they're going to go. That would include Dylan Gabriel from Oklahoma. He is off and will take over for Bo Nix now at Oregon, so he is moving there. Also, Cam Ward at Washington State. We're still to yet officially hear where he's going to go, but there's been rumors that he may end up at a place like Ohio State, perhaps, since they have a void to fill now that Kyle McCord has said that he is leaving there, which was kind of a surprise to some. Blake Shapen at Baylor's moving over to Mississippi State. Sam Levitt from Michigan State is heading over to Arizona State. Max Johnson moving from Texas A&M over to North Carolina. Tyler Shuck, who was previously at Oregon, was at Tech this last year just for a year, and now is moving on to Louisville. That was some of the big names that are out there. I know there's more and many others that have put their name out to move around, but definitely kind of that Ohio State situation was one that was interesting for a lot of people, just because Ryan Day was kind of put on the spot during a press conference leading up to the bowl season and said, hey, would you say that he's going to be the guy next year? And he really wouldn't commit to it, and which, whether or not that's the right way to go as a coach, you can argue that both ways, but it was tough for him in that moment to try to make that statement. And hey, a week later he's gone, so obviously he took something out of that, and that's what we're going to see. I mean, that's tough for coaches. How do they handle this each and every year?
Yeah, and I might know the easy thing is to knock people for transferring, but when you look, we just spoke about the Heisman. What 3 of the 4 are transfer players?
True,
so
yeah.
I mean, you got to find what the right fit for you. We've always talked about that in especially in college sports, and just transferring or just picking a school when you're going through your initial recruitment is the right fit is always the term used. So maybe players have a little bit more control on that opportunity. It's tough to track, from a fan's perspective or someone in the the industry or the business. That's what makes it kind of tricky is, until you get down to maybe, a date or, a couple teams that, everyone's interested in every school initially, of course, because why wouldn't you, explore all your options? But like we said, it's a little tricky, but it's just part of the game now, and it's something you have to adjust to. And there's got to be just some crazy inner workings and behind the scenes stuff going on that we only know a percentage of. I can imagine just being a coach and dealing with that, but at the same time, it's just comes with the territory. We all have stuff we hate in our jobs that we got to do. So figure it out and do the best you can with it. But I'm obviously, if I'm pro NIL, I'm definitely probably pro transfer. So, but there is a limit to it. Then it was kind of just set up as a free for all, and that's what we're getting as a result. So, and a little bit more regulation and some standards in place would have helped, but can't really go backwards now. We just gotta find maybe a happy medium and try to work around it. Maybe there will be some red tape type of stuff put into play here in the next couple of years, but as of right now, it's just kind of the system you have to deal with.
Yeah, and like you said, I think we're both kind of pro kids' ability to do that, especially when it's in certain scenarios. We've seen that so many times where a coach is gone, but then the kids are still tied to that place when they may very well been there because of the coach. So that situation, I think everybody's on the same page that those kids should have that right to make a decision if they want to leave and go somewhere else. Now, when it comes to some of these guys that have been on their third, maybe fourth school, that's when we start to get, okay, do we need to make some changes and adjustments here? Because to that point, it starts to become not fair to the programs a little bit on the other side. So it's interesting. I mean, there's always, I think every situation is different, and you have to take it that way. But maybe there are going to be some overall limitations on this too down the road.
Yeah, when you're pushing 25, or unless you were a former baseball player, did that first, or maybe went on a mission trip as Mormon students at BYU, something to that effect. It's one thing, but yeah, just to be, at some point you got to just say, this is kind of the end of the line, and time to move on and do something else in life. But yeah, I'm with you there. Like, it's fine, a couple, 3 times coach leaves, certain situations, injuries, because something we don't talk about often is a lot, players get hurt, and that scholarship's not guaranteed.
Yeah.
So that they could be forced to transfer. So that's something that isn't often brought up. So I it's kind of see all sides of it. But yeah, there is, like I said before, there needs to be some limits put in place, and hopefully we can get to that. But it's not going to be any time in the near future, I don't think.
Well, and I think from the coaching side of it too, it's going to be interesting to see how guys handle this as we move on further. I think the Ryan Day situation was a perfect example of that. I mean, if he's being honest as a coach, he shouldn't say that, yes, this 100% is my man, because he's probably recruiting 2-3 other kids to come in to play quarterback next year. And what are they going to think if they he says, "Oh, this is our guy," and they're coming in, they don't have a chance. Like, the idea is always you're supposed to have competition within the team. Guys are supposed to earn the job. You're not just supposed to outright throw it in somebody's lap. So if he's being honest, he's not saying that in that press conference. But if you maybe want to kind of play around with it a little bit and get kids to lean one way or another, maybe you do kind of say some of those things that could turn out to not be true when the actual season rolls around. So how do you win and lose in those situations? That's difficult. Coaches are going to have to figure out how they're going to play that.
And then you got to think about how's Lou Holtz going to react to this.
Exactly.
That's a whole nother curveball he's got to deal with, and dealing with Mr. Holtz. So, no, but I'm with you there. Like, there's a thin line there, and it's a slippery slope. But just you have to adapt, and the good coaches will.
Yeah, true. The ones that know what they're doing and relate to their players well will probably do better than others, because they're going to get a little bit more of a pass from their players if they fully understand them. That's certainly the case. So that's some of the big names. It'll be interesting, obviously, to watch that and see where some of these other guys end up and play. Obviously, I think Gabriel was one of the big ones, moving on from a place like Oklahoma at an interesting time when they're moving to another conference where you'd think he would enjoy some of that competition, but maybe felt like Oregon's a better fit for him. And obviously, you saw what Bo Nix did and revived his career in going there. So, it's good. A lot of guys have lots of choices, and certainly sometimes when it comes to the better players, you end up in some pretty good spots sometimes, just depending on if you had just a little touch of success, even though you might not be, he's not a guy was in the Heisman conversation necessarily, but he's a good player, and he's getting good chances at big time programs all over the country. So that's going to happen to a lot of these guys here as we move on down the road. So we'll keep on that tracker. We'll mention some of those probably, I'm sure, as we move on down the line through the rest of bowl season. But that's kind of what I had on my plate for some of the big topics here within the sport outside of the actual competition. And now we're excited to get back to the competition. Bowl season, like we said, these early games are fun for everybody to whet their appetite. Maybe not so fun if for the actual professional folks in the gambling world because they can be pretty unpredictable. We always talk about motivation. That seems to be a thing that plays in quite a bit in some of these games, where a team's at mentally. And now, obviously, with the portal being a thing, you have a lot of teams that don't have guys that play or guys that are going to sit out and go to get ready for their professional careers. So that impacts things. And then you get matchups that you don't normally ever see. So it provides a lot of wrinkles in there and what we're trying to predict here. And I guess that's part of what makes it fun, too. Obviously, would we watch all of these games if we knew the results? Probably not. We might watch a little bit, but we're probably not going to be as locked in as we are when some of these are a little bit more exciting and intriguing. And let's hope that's what we get. So we're starting with quite a few here coming up on Saturday, the 16th. And one of the first ones to get it started will be bright and early on the 16th at 10 o'clock in the morning, the Myrtle Beach Bowl, as Georgia Southern gets to take on Ohio. We got a little Maction versus Sunbelt here coming up. Georgia Southern a 3.5-point favorite in that contest. SJ, something jumping out at you on that one?
That the being an underdog, Ohio there is a little surprising with Georgia Southern just being 500 and Ohio having a 9-3 mark. That's kind of one of those that we talked about throughout the year that makes you scratch your head a little bit, thinking either they're trying to get money one way or the other, or they're know something we don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna go ahead and think that I know more than them, even though that's probably not the case. And I do like that plus 3.5 for Ohio. Like we said before, we're not gonna play every game, but as far as the picks go, I think Ohio can cover that 3.5, and I wouldn't be surprised if they go ahead and win the game outright this week.
Yeah. I was with you on this one. When I looked at it, I'm like, really? They're going to be an underdog? I mean, they have let me down in a few games late in the season. It seemed like they stumbled down the stretch a little bit more than they did earlier on. Played really well early in the year and won some big games. But, and Georgia Southern, I think the competition throughout the Sun Belt is a little bit tougher, but I do think this Ohio team has some pretty good overall top-end potential, so I think I'm going to go with you there. I think getting those points helps. Even if it's a close game, they can hang within that 3.5, and then, like you said, maybe just outright win the game. So I'm going to stick with you and go with Ohio there to eke one out there in that first one of the slate.
Yeah, that one's at 10 a.m. I'm kind of curious, what time is that Pop-Tarts Bowl going to kick off? That seems like that should be the morning kick, their breakfast time with a couple Pop-Tarts, But I guess maybe they're assuming they want to get the game over and get out to the beach there. So I don't blame them for that. The more beach time you can get, the better.
That's probably true. Yeah. When is it? I'm gonna have to look that up. When is the Pop-Tarts Bowl?
Like 8 a.m. kickoff. Let's go.
Yeah, it's either going to be 8 a.m. or like 11 p.m. for all.
Yeah, like a midnight snack. Yeah, there you go.
The other one we'll move to now is the New Orleans Bowl, and this will be a 1:15 p.m. kickoff. Jacksonville State is a 3-point favorite against Louisiana in that matchup there in the New Orleans Bowl, and I guess I'm going to. Again, I was kind of surprised when I saw this. Why is one team favored over the other? I know Jacksonville State's had a fun season. They've won, quite a few games that probably wasn't expected, and they were one of those teams that was in that controversy of should they be able to play, in the postseason. So, obviously, if I'm looking at this from a smart motivational standpoint, then yeah, maybe they are the ones that really want to be here. But Louisiana's had a pretty strong season, and they play in a tough league. So I don't know. I'm gonna lean Cajuns here, and especially being right in their own backyard, pretty close. I'm gonna go Louisiana, getting the 3.
Yeah, with you there. There's a little bit of confusion again, and I think a lot of it goes back to just what we keep saying is how there's a lot of variables go into these games. I'm more along the lines of not willing to jump one way or the other. So I'm gonna stick with the total. I think it's gonna be a shootout. We'll go over 57. It's a little high, but both these teams have shown throughout the season they can put up some points, and I think they can get over that 57 total.
Okay. Yeah, that's an interesting way to look at that one. And of course, yeah, all these will kind of pay attention to that as well. We move on to the Cure Bowl. And well, I mistakenly didn't write down all of where the heck some of these are either, so I don't know. I don't even know where the Cure Bowl is.
That's not our job. We're just giving them the picks. They can look that up. That's on
That's
Google or
true.
ESPN
Yeah,
app, whatever you
yeah.
got.
It's a patch of grass. That's all that matters, right?
Yeah.
Miami of Ohio is taking on App State. App State is a 5.5 point favorite in that contest. It's a 2:30 p.m. kickoff. What are you seeing there?
I actually like the upset. More towards that 5.5 spread. So if I'm gonna a little more confidence on that, but I think Miami could maybe get it done here. Just the unfamiliarity and I don't know. I just something about those MAC teams. Well, at least we spend a lot of time watching them. Maybe that gives a little bit more confidence in their play compared to some of those other teams. But I do know App State's had a strong year and they're pretty quality squad. I think in the interest of hopefully picking out an upset here on the first day. I think Miami can get it done. We'll go plus. We'll take the spread though. The 5.5 points.
Yeah, Miami of Ohio was one of those teams that really had a strong second half of the season. They came on big. They, of course, win the MAC championship, which is something we didn't pick at the time. And then App State kind of took it on the chin against Troy in that final game that they had. So I'm with you. I'm going Miami of Ohio. I think they pull not only cover the 5.5. I think they're probably going to win outright. But I'll stick with the spread like you just to be safe. But I think they get it done because they've been playing well here at the end of the season. That probably trickles, I guess, into a little bit of that momentum idea. They've got some of it on their side. We move on to the New Mexico Bowl, and a team from the home state gets to play in it. New Mexico State will take on Fresno State. So a couple of teams from the old desert battling it out. 3.5 point favorites are New Mexico State. It's a 4:45 kickoff. I'm going to go with the team from the home state. I think New Mexico State is able to cover that spread. It's been a down year for Fresno compared to their standards. New Mexico State's program that has kind of been on that 500 type streak for a while now, and they've really have continued, I think, to improve as time has gone on. It's been a good year for them. I'm gonna stick with them, and I think they win the bowl game here.
I think being in the home state definitely helps. Again,
Yeah.
still a little bit leery. So I'm going to go ahead and stick with the total again. I like the overs. West, being in that Southwest West Coast, you can expect some offense, some playmakers, some big time scores. So I think feel pretty safe there. Especially New Mexico State's really ran up some numbers this year. So I like the over 51 again. Just being as I don't. Those hooks, man. I'm one of those that stays away from the hooks whenever I can.
Yeah, 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 and that's not a terribly high number either. So yeah, they can probably get there to 51. Then we've got to cap off a couple left to cap off that Saturday. The L.A. Bowl. Isn't this? I think this is the one where Jimmy Kimmel's had some fun with this, isn't it? Yeah, he's had some good little shticks going on with this thing on the side. But it's a 6:30 kickoff, and again, a hometown team gets to play in it. UCLA, 2.5 point favorite right now against Boise State. And this is one that becomes very interesting. We talked about this before we started. As we understand it, the quarterback probably will not be playing there for UCLA because he's into the portal. The coaching situation's been iffy throughout the year there for UCLA. Chip Kelly obviously won some big games there late. The win over USC obviously I think helps, and maybe he does stay there and keep his job. But it's a little shaky there for the Bruins. So I don't know how this is going to play out. What are you thinking?
Yeah, there's a lot of variables to factor in there. Like I said, it's tough and being in home. Not quite your home stadium, but being in your home metro region. We'll call it. It's not exactly the backyard, but close enough. Yeah.
Still maybe an hour away, but
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, depending on traffic, could be a good 3 hours.
yeah.
Not a bad day, but despite all that, I do still like him to cover those 2 points. Basically, kind of just maybe it's the name could be the logo. Kind of leaning me that way. It's because Boise has had success, and I guess if this by the numbers would be an upset, I suppose. But just kind of being the David versus Goliath, they've had obviously some big games Boise has, but I like UCLA still to get it done despite all the distractions or whatever you want to call them.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Boise's been on a little heater here at the end of the year. They came on strong after they fired their coach. You know, they get all the way to the Mountain West Championship game and they win it. Beat UNLV pretty handily in that title game. So they are on a roll. But I think I'm with you. I think this UCLA team has been good enough, and I think surprisingly better than people thought that they were going to be. And being home, and yeah, kind of some of the other stuff that'll go on the outside, I'm sure, with the activities that'll happen during bowl week, that'll be kind of a distraction a little bit for those Boise guys. So I'm going to go UCLA as well to cover that slight small margin there. So I mean, that's pretty much anytime you're getting under that 3, to me it's just like, okay, who's going to win the game, because it's really not very often you're winning by a point. So
Well, especially in a bowl game too. I mean,
yeah, we don't see that very often. The last one that'll cap off the day on Saturday is the Independence Bowl down there in old fine Shreveport, Louisiana. I have visited before. It is an interesting experience. You should do it just for the fact that you're going to come away with some stories, and maybe see some things that you didn't expect to see when you were heading down to the old Louisiana. But Cal's taking on Texas Tech. Tech right now a 3-point favorite. Cal, one of those surprise teams. They've kind of made the Pac-12 better than a lot of people expected here this season. They won some big games and kind of held tough in a lot of them that people were expecting them to get blown out in. And then Tech, a little bit of the same way. I think Tech had more expectations coming into the season. There were a lot of people that said they were kind of a dark horse team in the Big 12. Didn't live up to that. But early in the year, they played tough against Oregon, so they've had some games throughout the year where they've been in the mix and against some tougher teams. So this is kind of an interesting game. I think I'm gonna lean Tech here. I don't know necessarily why. I think Cal has been good enough against some pretty good teams, but I think Texas Tech probably maybe the team that's going to be more up for playing, and I guess excited to try to prove something in this game, especially with their quarterback leaving. That does hurt, but I think they're going to be out to prove that hey, we're still a place that people want to be, and we're going to try to turn things around here a little bit. This is kind of one of those launching type games for them, so I'll take them to cover that 3, even though this is I feel pretty shaky about it.
all right, we'll go ahead and have our first respectful disagreement here, and I'm going to take Cal, but I'll go with the points. It's close game either way. It's basically, like you said, 2 points, coin flip. Could be anybody's game. I do like the fact that Cal's kind of on a little bit of a win streak here, three in a row. Only lost there towards the end of the season was, they got smoked by Oregon, but they did, 1 point loss to USC, where USC kind of had to pull it out of their arse to end up pulling away with that one. So, and Tech coming off that 50-point loss was their last game against Texas. That might stick in your craw a little bit, so I'm kind of leaning on that. I think it'll be a good game, though. I do think both will be motivated. Usually, the Independence Bowl is kind of one of those almost like the Holiday Bowl. Is the late night kickoff, and you kind of get an interesting or fun matchup or fun game. Even the teams may not always be on paper saying, "Oh, it's going to be a great game," but once they get on the field, it's something about the atmosphere. That's what I was going to say when you're talking about the bowl. It's definitely an interesting town, city, whatever you want to call it. I will give them props. I do like that they've been able to. I know that everyone has a sponsor now, but they've been able to maintain the Independence Bowl name. That's kind of cool, because
cool.
A lot of these we see now, it's whatever. We're having fun with it, but the Pop-Tarts Bowl, stuff like that. It's kind of, I don't know. I just it was nice. Just remembering is what makes it hard for me. I don't mind change, whatever. Do what you got to do to make your money, but it was a little bit easier to remember the Orange Bowl, Copper Bowl, Fiesta Bowl, so on, Sun Bowl, instead of the whatever the Academy Sports Bowl or PlayStation. That's it. I'm I don't even know where this is or who plays this, but it's just the way it is. We'll adapt, just like we said those coaches should. But I'm looking forward to that one. The Independence Bowl is usually a good time.
Yeah, the walk-ons, whatever, the bad boy mowers bowl. Whatever.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I agree. And I will say too, I think it's impressive that they've been able, because that's one that a couple of different times they're I don't know financially if we're going to keep playing this game. They had a couple of desperation times where they had to have somebody step in and really help them, sponsor the game, not being a headline sponsor like the other ones are, and they found a way to do it. So credit to them. They've continued to run the game, and like you said, it turns out usually to be a pretty good game. So we'll look forward to seeing if that one turns out that way. The other game that we're going to pick here is going to filter over into Monday. Of course, we'll be bringing you another pod here after the end of next weekend, like we normally do. But we wanted to get the Monday one in there just because usually the show doesn't come out until Monday, so you might be missing things. So, but this is coming up on the 18th. There, the famous Toastery Bowl. This is a new one, new sponsor.
Tradition unlike any other.
Everybody's been waiting for this one. Western Kentucky and Old Dominion. And, not only that, it's like an afternoon game on a Monday. This one screams a sicko game, I guess, right?
They're shooting for that work from home crowd, I think is what they're going for. They want to keep those remote work days alive. So give us something to put on in the background.
Counting on some folks taking that early vacation, getting ready for the holiday. Old Dominion, though, a 2.5-point favorite here in this one. I think from what I heard you peep out earlier before we started, I think we're probably on the same page here. I think we're going Hilltoppers on this one.
Yeah, I'm with you there, and it's kind of just like again, we're under 3 points, so for us that's a pick 'em basically. So just seeing a little bit more of them this season, and they've maybe a little barely, but maybe a little bit of a more tested team there, and maybe prove their worth a little bit better in my eyes. But there's not much of a separation there. I could see it going either way, but with the way the odds are in the books, I'm looking, you're at least be able to make a little bit of money there if you want to make win out. Rather, you're getting some plus odds there as the underdog for Western Kentucky, and being just 2.5 points is not exactly a long shot, but you can still make yourself some money there if you want to do that.
Yeah, well, and that's something too just to bring up real quick is when it comes to bowl season, obviously you're not going to have as many games as you normally would on a college football Saturday, so you kind of got to pick and choose. And if you're one of those that likes to maybe piece a couple of things together, well, now that might have to be strung out across a couple of days if you're going that way. So maybe that changes to some of the ways that people will play things. Maybe they are going to stick more to a single type of game and put a little bit more money on a certain game just because that's how the schedule is set up too.
Yeah, I know definitely this first weekend, whatever you want to call it, stretch over to Monday. Obviously, there's not going to be nothing on Sunday, but that's going to be my strategy for sure. Is just kind of maybe zeroing in on one or two, and just hammering those couple that I feel good about. And in this case, it's going to probably be looking at the point totals more than anything, and maybe that UCLA game. But like we always do, we'll get the graphic out there with the emojis we've landed on to kind of get you an idea of what we really like or what we're actually going to put our money on. So you can either be with us or against us, and then we'll reconvene next week and see who was the on the winning side of everything there.
That's true. We can start to find out who our faders are, right? So, yeah, we're having some fun with it. Glad bowl season is here. Excited to watch some good matchups here in the postseason. That's the other thing too. I think a lot of people think that the luster maybe is starting to wear off on bowl season just because of kids not playing, those types of things. But to me, it's still college football. It's still fun, even if it's the next wave of kids that get the chance to get out there and have some fun on the field. We're still going to enjoy it, and I hope that this, still kind of hangs around in some fashion as we move to changes down the line here with the way the postseason's going to be.
Yeah, it kind of goes, I think, back to the conversation we had when when the streaming apps come up and the services that you have to find. Everyone complains about it, but when it actually comes down to kickoff and game time and stuff's on, people are going to watch it. I mean, if you want to, you're going to watch it. And I think it's more of just like, maybe harkening back to what you're used to. And of course, if you grew up doing something, it's going to seem like it's the best because you only remember the good stuff. You don't remember the bad stuff of not being able to watch anything. That's how I think of. It was amazing when you're in our younger days of being 10 games on New Year's Day, but there was literally like 3 or 4 actually that you could watch.
Yeah, it's true.
You're score watching on the rest of them. So to me, I'd rather be able to access them, even if I have to do it at the same time. Maybe not able to watch them all, every single play by play, but I'm able to at least know what's going on while games are going on at the same time. So that's to the benefit, I think, these days. I can't imagine going back. Like, I mean, obviously it was cool when New Year's Day was the day, but it's being able to see things is better to me than, memories or thinking about something. I'd rather I'd rather visualize and experience it.
Yeah, yeah. So we'll hope you have some fun watching games here this weekend. We'll, of course, catch up with you again after this weekend's slate of games and get you ready for another good stretch run. We should have a lot of good games starting to filter in here for that next pod, so we look forward to that. That's SJ Munoz. I'm Chris Parks. Of course, follow us on social media at Cherokee CP, at SJM Bets are our Twitter handles. We'll give you lots of info there and the graphics to go along with it. And then you can, of course, listen to the pod and share the pod on the Spotify platform or through Amazon or also Google Podcast if you want to spread the word. We certainly would appreciate it, and we look forward to watching some great football here throughout bowl season. We'll see you next week for some more covers here on Every Day We're Covering.